So I have printed out a few handouts for you guys that will go along with the presentation. You can just keep that on the bottom.
What?
Thank you.
Video.
Oh, Robert's doing it. Oh, okay. Thank you guys for being here today.
Certainly.
So we are going to talk about communication.
Whoop.
And I'll put this right here for Beth.
I didn't bring my pen.
I
got a
one.
pencil.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I like pencils anyway.
So I am in my second to last semester of master's program in organizational leadership with an emphasis in communication. So this class really has been focusing on communication approaches, styles, techniques, and how we can really get into negotiation and not think of it as always negative, and how we can be more open and positive about it. And Robert, you are an expert on this, so you can give me some pointers too while I talk. But thank you for the opportunity to present this Mission Essentials Guide to Communication for the Military and Family Readiness Center here at Fort Sam. I support you guys' mission. You know that. I'm sorry I haven't been here as much as I should have this past semester, but I understand your mission is very complex and you have tons of responsibilities that you do, but I just want to highlight your mission statement: to facilitate the commander's ability to provide comprehensive, coordinated, and responsive services that support readiness of soldiers, civilians, employees, and their families, and to maximize technology and resources, adapt to unique installation requirements. Do you want me to go on? Eliminate duplication in service delivery and measure service effectiveness. These are almost near impossible with the staff that we have. I don't know how you guys do it, but that's part of this presentation, is really to help maybe like harness down on some communication aspects that can help you guys, because I know the components of this mission are
Where'd you
tremendous.
get that?
I'm sorry?
Mission, where'd you get that from?
Off Army One Source.
Oh, for ACS?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I couldn't find military and family
Right.
readiness because
Yeah,
I
it's
figured it would be.
joint base.
Is that
Right.
is that okay? Is it
Yeah.
it's somewhat in line?
It should be the same.
It should be the same.
Okay. It was comprehensive. That it's like 2 parts to the mission statement. So, with this, without further ado, this presentation, we're going to explore various communication aspects in the following capacities: communication overview, the 4 most common communication approaches tied into the importance of good communication practices, conflict resolution, and the power of negotiation. We will set communication goals, then conclude the presentation to keep Fort Sam Houston's Military and Family Readiness Center thriving, and to remain the first point of communication for our military service members and their families. All right, so a communication overview. Why are you not going? There we go. It's our little huddle, because that's how we communicate, right? How do we communicate with our colleagues, volunteers, and leadership? Do we follow ethical communication practices on a daily basis? Is there a power in positive communication?
Yes.
I would hope so. Although ethical communication is culturally bound, the following organizational values are suggested, and these go right along with the Army core values. You were Army,
Yes.
correct? Okay, so you know these by heart. You would hope other people
Let's refresh
share
my
these.
memory.
Well, these are ethical organizational values: to trust one another,
Yes.
treat one another with respect,
Yeah.
recognize the value of each individual, keep our word, aka don't drop the ball. I added that. Tell the truth and be honest with others, act with integrity, be open to change, risk failing in order to get better, and learn by trying new ideas. These are not always the easiest thing to do, especially when others typically are not engaged in the same exact practices. So we're going to just go over, what does it take for a leader to attract others to follow their guidance direction? That is like a loaded question, is it not? How does this interaction translate into the language of effective communication? Fortunately, there are no wrong or right answers. There's no bad ideas to achieve these goals because the four main approaches can be applied. Communication as an information transfer, communication as a balance of creativity and constraint, communication as a transactional process, and communication as a strategic control, which we try to avoid. Can anyone guess which process would be ideally most effective? It's like information transfer, transactional, strategic, or a balance of creativity and constraint. If not, I will.
Which one would be the best?
Best, like in an organization, like
But isn't it,
maybe ideal, most
isn't
ideal.
it based on the
It's a combination
situation?
of all of them.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
mean,
say
'cause-
at least
Yeah,
you have to be
Information
analytical. You'd have to, split with creativity and what's the last one? Creativity
And
and
constraint.
constraint. Yeah, you have to know when to be quiet and
right.
when to speak up. You also have to know your audience. That's the creative part I'm thinking about. You also have to know your audience when you're.
You gotta know your audience like all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
It
always
seems
gotta-
like a combination of.
It is a loaded question.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Because basically, it has based on the situation, and then you
Go for
guess the
it from
situation
there.
is knowing your audience. and-
Everything.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
All your answers
All
are right. Okay. All right. There we go. Where's my next page?
But you popped up information transfer, and
So is
Yes.
that one the most
Is that the
important,
one?
or is that the first
It's
one?
my
you're
first
talking
one.
about?
okay.
Yeah, information
Cindy?
transfer. So we assume that this version of communication uses the following procedures. That language allows us to transfer thoughts and feelings from one person to another. That speakers and writers insert thoughts and feelings into words. Words contain those thoughts and feelings, and listeners or readers extract those thoughts and feelings from the words. However, there are problems with this type of communication because it can lead to information overload, distortion, and ambiguity. This is like a metaphoric pipeline from which the information flows from one person to another. So I've never been a military and family readiness employee, but I assume that information overload or the information transfer is pretty rampant in your line of work, just from things always getting pushed to your office if they don't know where it goes. But I can assume that this would be so overwhelming. That's why you're so organized, and that's why you're you're green, right?
Oh,
Green,
you're killing
because
it.
you have to
Yeah.
have organization in order to complete those tasks. Are you looking? Okay. Yeah.
Our mountain is a lot shorter.
That's
now.
why I picked this picture, because I know y'all have
Yeah.
to deal with this all the time, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's no longer a pile of papers. It's stuck in your digital inbox.
Yes.
So
Well, there was one picture of somebody sitting at the desk, and then the computer was like throwing information out, and his brain was exploding. So I didn't think that was appropriate. But the next
depends on your audience.
Yeah, the next one, I don't know if you can, it's kind of a little bit distorted, but transactional process is, although, communication approaches might offer certain unique positives and negatives, I personally feel, and it's just maybe just personal, but I feel like using communication as transactional would be the best interest of leadership to adhere for different followers and for different situations. Because no two people are alike, and it takes a good leader to recognize that there's no one size fits all when communicating. We see this a lot in the transactional process because message meanings are not in people and they're not in words. So, question, when was the last time you practiced a transactional communication process? Transactional, like you're communicating and they're getting it. They're getting it and they're possibly communicating back to you.
I get that daily with that woman over there.
That's so important.
Transactional, yeah. Which is a really big deal to have somebody take in what you're saying, understand what you're saying, and then be able to decipher it a lot of times into what you need and be able to complete things. To be able to decipher what you're saying and understand what you're saying.
Would you think that follow-up would go in this type of process? Like transactional I think the key to pretty much anything is follow up, follow up, follow up. And I use that in my friendships, in my relationships, in business or whatnot, but I think it all encompasses transactional. I used transactional this morning with my 5-year-old. This is my middle child. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Says
And
something, yes.
I said, Harrison, get your shoes on. This is a daily thing in my house. And he's like coloring or whatnot. I'm like, Harrison, get your shoes on, just a little bit louder. That was straight up information transfer. The child was hearing me. He was just not listening. You better believe the third time I used this because I said, Harrison, get your shoes on. Like, we made eye contact. He didn't hear me. He listened to me. Actually got up before I turned into crazy mode. So, yeah, the information transfer, I would assume that this would be the best, most collaborative type of information sharing and communication. But there's definitely a power, I think, in using the transactional. The third of the 4 is strategic control. And we probably see this a lot in military. It's one directional. This functions exactly the way it sounds. It regards communication for influencing and shaping the environment, but also recognizes that because of personal, relational, and political factors, greater clarity is not always the main goal in interactions. Strategic ambiguity accomplishes the following goals as it promotes unified diversity, preserves privileged positions, is deniable, and facilitates organizational change. This communication approach challenges the idea of shared meaning as the primary basis of motivation.
So it's not collaborative at all.
It's like,
Is
alright,
that like the power is knowledge?
I would think.
Knowledge is power, I mean.
I think that can be incorporated into that. But when I think of, this is just personal, but when I think of strategic, I think of just kind of a linear communication, like, well, often what I do to my kids.
This
Yeah.
is a one-way conversation.
Yeah.
Or I have information and I'm only sharing with you this amount for whatever reason.
Yeah, or I might not really want any feedback from you.
Right.
This is what I'm telling you, or even expect any type of follow-up or any kind of questions. And, I mean, I see that a lot in schools, like with teachers. And it's a technique. It's not good or bad. It's just, it is what it is. So, I'm still in favor of one of the other ones I just said. So balance of creativity and constraint is the last one. And this is more like a perception or an idea, but communication is the moment to moment working out of tension between individual creativity and organizational constraint. More specifically, it's moment to moment working out tension refers to the balance. Like I try to do like a chart, like the balance. I think everything's how you can balance life, work, relationships, self, if you even throw yourself in there. But thinking innovatively, being willing to re-examine taken for granted routines and practices, encouraging new ideas. The constraints part is the construction of reality that limit the individual's choice of strategic response, like deadlines, or financial limits, rules, whatnot, like working in any organization. Conflict. How many people see yourself as the person in the middle? How many of you, the mediator? Yeah. What about one of these on the side? Y'all always,
I can be.
you always try to.
I can go there.
I think it depends on the situation, and it depends on the topic or the issue.
It depends on the people for me.
I think it also depends on like your personality, because there's a lot of
I
times.
won't put myself in the middle if it's my sisters. I won't put myself in the middle of that. If it's something like more work, then and I like both people on both sides, then I will, because they just might need a mediator at the time. But like it just depends on who the people are for me. It depends on my relationship with the people.
Yeah, and
Whether
really knowing them.
Yeah, whether they want that.
How their personalities, if they're always trying to do this, You know what I'm saying? Conflict, Robert, you can help me out because you're the expert on this. But another huge aspect of communication that is often misunderstood is this: it's conflict. And I have been the person in the middle, and I've been the person on the other side. Mainly, I'm pretty much always the mediator. But one of the most important things to take away this is that you all know this, but there's no two individuals that have the same expectation and desires. And conflict is a natural part. It's just a natural part of interaction with other people. One of the most dangerous modes of conflict is to avoid it, because this type of behavior, especially from a leadership standpoint, is only masking what truly lies beneath the conflict or major issue itself. However, there are some instances when avoiding plays to leadership's advantage, when trivial issues surface. It's also effective when the workplace atmosphere is emotionally charged, when there's a short-term strategy. All-time, ultimate takeaway, avoiding conflict is never a good idea, and it creates a toxic environment and toxic atmosphere in any organization, I feel. I know y'all don't know anything about that.
It probably did. Just yeah.
It's going? Okay.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, sorry, I probably went a couple over. But a valuable tool to use for conflict is this, and it's about to come off. I'll cut it back. It's the Thomas Kilman conflict instrument, and it allows opportunity to be self-aware of their own conflict management styles. Have you seen this before, Art?
Yes,
The instrument, it's like invaluable, and it helps with leaders how they can deal with conflict management and can be applied, in training or leadership tools. I think we could probably even, I don't know what we could put it in AFTB. What we could put in like leadership?
Well, no,
Yeah,
they have
I
two
think-
conflict. There are two conflict. There's one in personal growth, and then there's another one in the leadership. So there's two conflict modules that
Okay.
exist.
Y'all ever seen this one before?
I've done that.
Something
Okay.
I
close
think I
to
have it upstairs in my box,
Yeah.
my flag stuff.
I like this one. These
Is there a free version that you could do?
Yeah.
The problem with some of these instruments is that they cost money.
Yeah.
If
Well,
you want to,
I bet maybe I can try to find, with program I could probably try, because I've actually done
'Cause-
research
okay.
on it, and it was $50, but I can.
If
Maybe
there's
so.
because like we've been doing, there's a personality. What is it? Personality 360. Is that what it was? .com or
Personality 363. Yeah. Personality 360.
It's basically the Myers-Briggs
Okay.
It's a free version.
instrument, but it's free,
Great.
and it assesses you pretty much the same. I mean, it's very accurate as
But
far
it
as it
probably.
goes. But I'm sure there's probably one. I'll look up. I have to look at my stuff upstairs.
Okay. Well, I like this one because it's just pretty. Yeah. It cooperativeness and assertiveness. I'm both. I'm assertive and I'm cooperative. So I'm always probably in the middle, like compromising.
What is the top left?
Competing.
Competing, collaborating,
Compromising.
avoiding, and accommodating.
It's like our bell curve one.
Yes, the bell. We
For
talked-
leadership.
Our splits,
Yeah,
in
okay.
leadership.
How you can truly understand and unleash like the power of conflict resolution is that the conflict origin must be determined. We know all that. It's got to be discussed. And conflict resolution is an essential tool for leadership, since a quarter, or maybe even less of their time, I would even say more, is spent managing employee issues, conflict included. Depends on your leadership, I guess. Conflict can affect job performance, group morale, and has the potential to influence productivity. Therefore, leadership must be on top of employee issues. Is everybody in this that needs to be? So the following simple process is used to prescribe conflict resolution. Diagnose the conflict. Identify a goal and focus on an opportunity to resolve it. Although sometimes employees can handle and manage their own conflicts imperative to the group dynamic and organizational function, that leadership can and will involve themselves in conflict resolution and negotiation. Moving on.
What was that bottom, it's, yeah, you see on your assertiveness, at the bottom right there, what does that say?
Unassertive?
Is that unassertive or non-assertive?
I couldn't read
Okay,
it.
don't worry
tell
about
the
it,
truth.
something like
Are you sure?
non-assertive, okay,
Non-assertive.
okay.
May I?
No, I got it, it's fine,
Are you
it's
sure?
probably, I didn't know what the opposite of assertive was.
That's why you make big lips. So, there are two main categories of negotiation, is the integrative and distributive. Any guesses as to which type you practice the most?
What is it again?
Integrative,
What-
Integrative and distributive. Kinda sounds,
I try to do distributive personally in my life.
I'll explain them. With integrative negotiation, there are no winners or there are no winners or losers. The basic principle of integrative negotiation processes are cooperative, collaborative, win-win, mutual gain, or problem-solving effects for both parties. This type of integrative negotiation requires 4 key components to create a free flow of information, how you guys work together, attempt to understand the other negotiator's real needs and objectives, emphasize the commonalities between the parties and minimize the differences, and search for solutions that meet the needs and objectives of both sides. I would like to think that leaders would do that. All
Takes
that
too
type
much
of
time.
right.
I can tell you right now, just read the whole description of that, and I'm just gonna flash back, and maybe too many years back.
No, I
but
want to know
felt
this.
like when I was a leader, you don't have all that time, because that, to me, I hate to say it sounds kind of touchy-feely in a military sense. Now, what I do as a volunteer coordinator, maybe I might have more time to do all that. So.
Touchy-feely stuff.
Well, I mean, I didn't say it was touchy-feely, but
No,
what you
I'm not
described,
meaning
it was
that, like-
it was like taking everyone's
Yes.
opinion. If I'm
It is.
recalling
Yes,
what you
you're
said,
exactly correct. It takes a lot of time
yeah,
and research, because when you deal with volunteers, I mean, you're dealing with
people,
yes,
and everybody's personality and
feelings.
personality, feelings, emotions, mental states. I'll tell you that.
True.
And also, I have an age,
You deal with diversity.
diversity in age too. So
Do you
that's
deal
all I'm
with
saying.
like
they know where
genders?
I'm
Do you
at.
deal with mostly females?
Mostly
or?
females and yes.
Of a younger age or the same age?
Oh, same age or older.
Or older?
So, and when I say younger, they're probably only younger, maybe 10 years, and I don't really feel like they're that young.
I call
We just have, so there's not a big generational.
Right.
different
yeah.
stages of life.
Yeah.
That's why I say
We
like
have
youngins
our-
in college. I'm like the kids.
I had my first volunteer who's an actual young person who took on a chair position. I'll give you a quick feed. We're at the thrift shop here at Fort Sam, so the volunteer coordinator. But I was told to find 2 volunteers to be day chairs. Our operational days are yesterday and today. And I found 2, and here's where now I'm getting feedback where their personalities or how they're dealing with people. One is more abrasive than the other, and I'm like, but I look at the second person, she's being assertive and a go-getter.
Mhm.
They like the touchy-feely. I'm like, let's get the job
Get it done.
She's green, huh, Raisha?
Yeah, she green.
So that's
Get
the
it done.
difficult part of
Get her
my volunteerism right now. It's like I'm getting volunteers, I'm getting them into key positions, and now we have newer people, so now I'm coming up with a volunteer training program, because this is our 3rd year in operation. First 2 years, very touchy-feely, and that was all good. It was totally volunteer run. Now we have paid people with a mixture of the rest are volunteers. So I hate to bring in, I don't want to bring in, but I hate to say when there's, okay, I'm not going to say it then.
No, we
Shut
can
up.
say.
I'm not going to
say
say
it.
it. I'm not saying it.
It's a communication. We'll
Let's
help
stop.
you.
I'm going to bring it to the direct point, is that we have those that I basically now have considered at this point in time, they're volunteers that I'm grandfathering them. They're not going to want to change.
Okay, yeah.
So from this point on, all the new volunteers I get in will be part of this volunteer training, so they see every single aspect of the operations of the thrift shop and not get themselves, I want to just stay in this one and just do this one job. Because the way I look at it is, if I have a volunteer and volunteers, they don't have to come, you know?
Right,
They could say they're committed to this day, but life happens.
right.
And so if I have cross-training, I could say, oh, we need this to function. And I'm not making the decision, I'm just doing the training for other volunteers. It's the day chair and the paid manager that will make those decisions, daily decisions. But if I don't have people cross-trained, they can't say, oh, we can't grab this person to help with this section because they
Right.
don't know.
This sounds monumental. Joy.
But it's like, to me, it's, all right, I don't know how to express it, communicative. It's, and I'm tracking, oh, that's the other thing I'm doing now. I have statistical analysis in my background. So I'm
Awesome.
tracking how many volunteers do I get per day. And
Sadie, you love her, don't you?
She does.
so basically, now I found out what days I'm really hurting in volunteers. And you know what day it is? It's always our first Saturday. So now now I'm working at how do I PR it, advertise to get volunteers to work on Saturday.
Mhm.
Because the people that are the core Wednesday, Thursday, and Tuesday are work day, you tap on them, you lean on them to make Saturday function. But if I could just get a core of just Saturday people to take
The
on
first Saturday.
and the first Saturday. I'm not
Yeah.
asking them for every Saturday of their
Just the
life.
first
The
Saturday.
first Saturday.
Yeah.
So, because I told everyone, don't mess up. I'm tracking number of volunteers. And I count volunteers not on there the whole day. I count if you're even there for like an hour to 2 hours for my total volunteer count. Because every volunteer hour counts.
Yeah, it does.
So, we're only open, 5-6 hours? 9:30 to 2:30. So that's
I need to go.
that's 5 hours. But you need that extra hour of, they
So
come
you're
early.
practicing negotiation,
Oh my
like
gosh.
every day, all day, or
Yeah, but I have a really hard, I'm trying to be in that other picture in the middle there, compromising, but sometimes I find myself doing avoidance quite a bit to keep my mouth shut.
Well, but I think
Because-
it's a paradigm. It's a paradigm shift. That's what I was looking up, because my husband and I were talking about this
okay.
later, this weekend, is trying to inculcate new ideas or new processes in an established organization,
Which is hard.
which is hard. So it's a paradigm shift is what you're trying to do. And
Here's the funny, your situation probably has a more, not set in stone, but more concrete culture. And I was thinking, okay, we only had 2 years, this being the 3rd year, you wouldn't think it's concrete the way people want to volunteer or function. You
But
would
it
think
is.
that they would see the power of the good.
Well, then you got these.
And then I have some folks that are advising or talking, and their
Not,
involvement is,
is it not positive?
everything's positive. It
Okay.
depends on how you look at it.
No, I
That's
mean,
my
like,
concept.
are they not?
I'm trying not to be the negative one. Okay?
You're not. You would. I would
No,
never
but
say that
it's-
about you, Joy.
It's really funny is because you're taking in this integrative
Yes.
concept, you're trying to take things in and you're trying not to assess them, analyze them, whatever, and look at it in a pessimistic way. You try to look at it, yeah, it's going to be more work, but is it going to be a greater value added in the whole run, in their intake?
I think
That's how I have to look at it. Because personally, I'm like, people like, hey, that's why I said the other one, the distributive way, because
No, yeah.
it's almost like, let's just do it.
Well, I think it depends on your role too.
So you didn't even get to distributive,
No,
so I
but
want to
Joy,
hear what
no, I appreciate it because I think also was discussion that we had in class was that, I mean, I brought up like, you don't just go into a negotiation saying, well, I'm going to be integrative or I'm going to be distributive, because it has a lot to do with how the other person, negotiates too. And what do? I am an integrative negotiator. You don't do that. It's not real life. So I think the approach somewhat has to match or the intent or what you want to get done. I mean, like you said, it takes a lot of time. Both of these take a lot of time. They take a lot of research. Distributive negotiation is different than integrated, and it includes a multi-dimensional situation where there will most likely be a compromise of some sorts for one or even both parties. Distributive is basically a competition. Who is going to get the most of a limited resource? You have to do that when you're in charge sometimes. You have to do that. I mean, you do. And this type of negotiation also brings in different types of fundamental negotiation strategies. Some of them can include being convincing to the other party to change their minds about an issue with your grandfather volunteers, or to alter their viewpoint in order to settle.
And that ties all the way back to your conflict.
Yes.
And conflict resolution. So depending on what type of conflict, how you deal with conflict, gives power to one of the people in this distributive negotiation.
I think it's all relative. It's like the material I was, presenting, it encompasses communication and best practices and styles and approaches and negotiation, and you can just have one. I mean, there are books written on just negotiation. There are books written on
just on conflict resolution.
Yeah, so it's very intricate, and I would be interested in just doing maybe like a negotiation, conflict resolution, how different approaches and styles, like best practices, tips on how to manage those, and maybe things to avoid. I'm sure you've read and studied on this. So it's important to take away that all distributive bargaining situations discover the other party's resistance points, which is change.
Yeah.
Your grandfather
Yeah, I
volunteers, and influence the other party. So distributive involves research, skills, a great bit of persuasion to master, and I think it's most helpful going into negotiation with an open mind, like you do. And I think it's the most effective communication process, and it allows a two-way street of information flow. So, recommendations? Is it yes?
Just thinking.
All right. So, where does the military and family readiness team members and leadership go from here? We presented basic communication concepts that highlight the importance of good communication practices, with also conflict. We've just scratched the surface. I don't know if we could even say scratched it. We just touched it. So I put on a sheet on your desk on just some communication goals. Either you want to do personal, you want to do workplace, and the capacities of communication. You guys are squared away, so I know you probably don't even need this, but if you want to just tack it on your board or your teams, you could slice this little guy in half, because I did 2. You have enough for 2, and we can give it in some other thing we have. It's just basically what you want, what you see for yourself, like goals wise. Like maybe do more transformative in certain programs, or with managing your volunteers. I think you're good to go, Joy.
Yeah, okay, but here's also, you know how you just discussed the information transfer?
Yes.
So they're big on like emailing this out to, and then, after a while, I'm like, okay, are they actually looking at it, or is it better for me just to attack it as they come in to visually see it? Because I also have that gender gap for folks that don't